Hello everybody, my name is Scott, and in this video we're going to be building a guitar pedal board. This is actually my third attempt at making this pedal board. The first two ended unfortunately in firewood, but hopefully third time is the charm, so let's get to it. I started off with a 6-foot piece of oak that I bought at a big box home center. I squared off the ends of the oak using my miter saw. By doing this, I knew I had a square end from which to measure. I measured down 17 inches for the front and the back boards. Then I cut the front and the back boards using the miter saw, as you can see here. I then put a 6-inch stop block on the miter saw. This was so that I could cut the 6-inch boards for the middle supports. By setting up a stop block, I could make sure that I cut each board at exactly 6 inches, which was what was needed. I then set up my table saw to rip the 3/4 inch cross supports. Ripping small boards is a lot easier when you have the right tools to use. I ripped the 5 cross supports out of 2 separate boards. I clamped them together, trying to make the grain look like it matched. I then sanded them down with 80, 120, and 220 grit sandpaper. My next step was to lay out the slots for the cross supports. They had to each be 3/4 of an inch with 3/8 of an inch in between. So here you see the layout for the 3 main cross supports. I had to rip the front and the back pieces at an 11-degree angle, so I laid it out and checked it with my protractor. Then I reset the table saw blade to an 11-degree angle cut. Before I cut them, I checked the pieces to make sure they were going into the blade at the right place, and they did come out correctly. Now my next step was to cut the cross support slots in the main supports. I did this with hand tools, but it was a slow and inaccurate process. Finally, though, I did get all of them cut. At this point, I wanted to test them to make sure the cross supports fit. The next step was cutting the 11-degree angle on the bottom of the main supports. I marked out the 11-degree angle, then checked it with a protractor. Then I set my miter saw to the same 11-degree angle. I elevated the pieces so that the entire blade would cut through them. As you can see, the angle came out perfectly. Once again, I put everything together just to test to see how it fit. I then sanded the front and back boards using 80, 120, and 220 grit sandpaper. I marked off on the back board where each main support should be positioned. Using yellow wood glue, I glued each main support to the back board. With each main support, I also checked it for square. After each support was down, I cleaned off the excess glue, and then I clamped all the boards to the main board. After that glue dried, I marked the gluing positions on the front piece. I then glued the front piece to the main supports. I made sure that I clamped this one down as well. At this point, I was really excited because this was as far as I had gotten in one of the builds. With a little more hand tool work, the cross supports fit in as well. To give the project added strength, I also wanted to use wood screws on the joints. So I drilled pilot holes, countersunk them, then drove in 8 by 1 1/4 inch screws in both the front and the back. I think that the screws will give the pedal board the added strength it needs. Now that the build was done, it was time to add some finish to the wood. I started by doing some finish sanding with 320 grit sandpaper. I used a tung oil finish that can be bought at any home center. I wiped it on using a cloth diaper, which is pretty much all that a cloth diaper is good for. This is the project after one tung oil finish application. Between each application, I hand sanded with 320 grit sandpaper. Before the last application, I buffed it with 4/0 steel wool. I really like the look of this guitar pedal board, and I can't wait to use it on a gig with my pedals. This project was a long time getting through, but it was well worth it. Here is just a short list of people that I needed to thank for helping me along and giving me encouragement during this build. I want to thank you all very, very much. And because New York State has the most lawyers of any state in the union, this is the legal part of the video. Thank you for watching. See you next time.